So I want to talk about the idea about limits to growth. And this is something, as Diane pointed out, that we get surrounded with. Kids are told there's too many people, we're a plague on the planet. Anything that we do is inherently bad. Like no matter what we do, it's sinful almost. It's a really religious kind of thing. Here's David Attenborough, the guy who does all those nature videos with his charming voice. The human population, he said, can no longer be allowed to grow in the same old, uncontrolled way. If we do not take charge of our population size, then nature will do so for us. It used to be that way. Go back a couple thousand years. A wild animal eats your children while you're sleeping. You die of cold from frost. You die of exposure. There's a drought. You have nothing to eat. You have no refrigerator. Your food goes bad and you die of food poisoning. It used to be the way that nature would take care of our population. But we change our relationship to nature. We're not like any other animal. They have a fixed carrying capacity. We don't, because of that ultimate resource Diane mentioned, our minds. We're not animals. We're different. So, look, the real truth about it is what actually gives this kind of growth. And I want to read two short quotes from Lyndon LaRouche. He says, only societies whose cultures commit them to successful technological progress as a policy of practice are qualified to survive and to prosper. You have to have an idea of progress. It's not just because you need it economically, you need it culturally. What are the unknowns that you're trying to discover? What are the things that we can't do right now that the kids are thinking about? They might be the person to figure it out. If you don't have that, you don't have a human culture. Because as the creators of the Renaissance viewed it, we're made in the image of God in the sense that we are like co-creators. We can discover principles of nature and use that to change how we live. The effect of this has been that human population, right now ends at 2020, we're already almost at 8 billion. We're off the chart. What let this happen? What transforms our potential population density? So, this is the book that LaRouche wrote in 1983. There are no limits to growth. This came out after the Club of Rome published reports called The Limits to Growth. And they said back in the 70s that we were about to run out of resources, that there wasn't enough energy, there was too much pollution, there were too many people, and we better cut back, otherwise we're going to have a really terrible cataclysm in the future. They weren't right. So let's think of a few things. What do we need as people? What do we need in today's world to survive? What does the human race depend on?
Food and water.
Food and water. What
Shelter.
else? Shelter. Mm-hmm. What else?
Energy.
Energy. That's a real big one.
Why we're here.
Yeah, right. Let's take a look at a few of those. This is a chart of how much agricultural land is used per person. This is for the whole world from 1940 to 2016. So you can see over the past 3 generations, the amount of land required to support each person is down. It's like 60, 70% down. Why is this possible? Why is less land needed to support each person today? What happened? Yeah, what are some of the technologies? What's that?
We have a way to put a lot of nitrogen into the ground.
The fertilizer.
Yeah, there are a lot of farms.
Absolutely. Farms, tractors, equipment, right? Very efficient. Here you can see it broken out for different parts of the world. I just want to point to the one that's on the very top, on the left part of the chart. That's Africa. So Africa in 1940 on average 4 hectares per person. Now it's down to 1. 75% reduction. This is great. When we grow, we actually have less, well, I'll leave that out. Okay. One of the other topics that was brought up is energy. This is a chart. Every dot on this chart is a country. And to explain what's going on here, on the horizontal, the left to right direction, is how much energy each person uses. Or how much energy the country uses divided by the number of people. The vertical axis is life expectancy. How long do people live in that nation? Is there any trend that you see here? More energy, the higher the life expectancy. Now, could you have a life expectancy of 90 if you weren't using any electricity, oil, natural gas, no energy?
Why not?
Right. You're not going to have a hospital. You're not going to have a refrigerator. You're not going to have schools and, technology and lights and everything. Transportation. Forget it. Energy is absolutely required to develop. And let's talk about how we get that energy. So wood was, that was the initial fuel when the country was founded. We used wood, directly for fire and cooking and heating. We used wood to make charcoal. And that's how we made iron. Coal, twice as much energy as wood. Plus, the benefit of coal is there's a lot of it in the ground already, and you couldn't use it to make furniture with. So save the trees. You want to save the trees? I'll tell you what technology saved the forests. Coal mining. Okay? Some of the first environmental laws, you might say, were in Europe in like the 1400s in Sweden, because people were cutting down all the forests to make charcoal, to make iron. And they said, no, we got to save the forests. But now nobody would do that. You use coal. Oil, even more efficient than coal in terms of how much energy there is for each amount. Plus, you can't fill up your car, you can't fill up your gas tank with coal. Right? It's not a liquid. You can have an internal combustion engine with oil. So not just more energy, but new technologies that you can have. And then you see at the end this tiny amount of uranium. These things all have the same amount of energy. So a ton of wood or 0.0002 pounds of uranium. That's not a lot of uranium, right? Huge energy density in nuclear. So another one of the things we talked about was resources. And I'm going to show a chart. This is from the limits to growth. And it's a hard to see chart, isn't it? So this line right here, that one that's going down below the red, that is their model from 1970 to 2170 of how much chromium would be available in all the mines of the world. They said there's plenty right now, and we're going to run out of it. The other one I want to look at is the one that goes up and then back down. This is the usage. So they said this is what would happen to the use of chromium. We're going to use more, we're going to run out, society's going to collapse. Well, let's take a look at what actually happened, though. In reality, the reserves, the red thing, went up. There's more chromium in mines in the world now than there were 50 years ago. How is that possible?
Extraction.
Because we found more of it. We have better ways of getting it. The Earth wasn't, creating chromium in some large quantity, but we figured out how to get it. And then in the bluish purple is the use. It's actually off the chart. It would be like at the top of that speaker above the television. That's how much chromium we're using today compared to that. So these people were totally wrong. They said that the economy is going to collapse, resources are limited. Reality showed exactly the opposite. So let's take a look at some of the places that have gone along with this green suicide thing. Like, we get this ghoul here. If you're wondering who you want to be for Halloween, you can scare people as Greta.
She's not a child.
She's not a child. No, so we can make fun of her all we want.
Yeah, I'm not interested anymore.
Right. So here she is. Don't use resources, you peons. That's just for people who are working to kill the rest of you, like us. Keep that energy in the ground. Don't use those resources. Just die right now. Live like an animal. In Germany, people shutting down their nuclear plants. And so what happens to energy prices in Germany when you shut down your nuclear plants? So this is energy prices in Germany. And the scale is kind of crazy because of, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, right? Okay, but if you kind of look back there, like 2019, 2020, you know, it's maybe 50, 40 on this chart. Today, 100. Energy prices have doubled. And in the meantime, they were, you know, up 10 times, let's say. How do you run a factory if your energy prices cost 3 or 4 times as much? Are you going to keep it open? You're going to leave. You're going to come to the US, you're going to go to China, which is what a lot of German companies are doing. So, all right, I just want to finish up by talking more about nuclear fusion. And I already forgot his name, Suzanne.
Williams. Brandon Williams.
Brandon Williams. You can tell I'm not a local. The congressman here is he's a big promoter of this technology, nuclear fusion. So let's talk about how that works. First, with a bit of history of the LaRouche movement's involvement in this. Lyndon LaRouche in the 70s created the Fusion Energy Foundation and the magazine Fusion that developed a subscriber base in the 6 figures, over 100,000 subscribers, before it was shut down by the government when LaRouche and many of his colleagues were arrested. But this is what we were talking about, breakthroughs in fusion. The successor magazine, 21st Century Science and Technology, talked about how nuclear power could transform our water resources, how it could transform our ability to defend ourselves against an asteroid or a comet. There could be an undiscovered asteroid that's heading our way, is going to hit the Earth in 3 months, and let's say destroy New York State.
Bruce Willis isn't available?
Now, we've found a lot of them, but we haven't found all of them. So if we hear tomorrow from NASA, an asteroid's coming, it's going to destroy New York State in 3 months, what do?
Get out.
We get out! That's what I'm doing! That's it! Now, wouldn't it be good if we had a better solution? What if we could take out that asteroid? What if we could get to it quickly? Right now we can't. Chemical rockets are so slow. So this is just one example of a fusion machine. So I want to talk about that briefly. So current nuclear power plants break apart uranium, which is a very big nucleus. It's one of the biggest atoms that exists. We break them apart, it releases lots of energy. We use that heat to basically boil water, make steam, blow it through a fan, and spin a generator. Nuclear fusion is what the sun does. So what's powering the sun? It's not a big ball of, propane. It's hydrogen turning into helium, mostly. When you put tiny atoms together, you get energy. If we do that ourselves, forget talking about solar power. This would be real solar power, okay? Creating the sun. The amount of energy in these reactions is 1,000,000 times more than in chemical reactions in your car engine or on your stove, burning natural gas. 1,000,000 times more energy in these reactions. Here's a little video of how this one particular technique would work. So the fusion fuel is controlled by magnets and electric fields and plasma. In this design, you shoot these pieces together at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You crush them with a magnetic field when they get there. And that would be to kind of create the conditions in the sun, where gravity squeezes things together, to get them together. We would squeeze things together using electricity, using magnets. And then you get energy out of it. So actually there's a lot of reasons for this. Why don't we have this right now? One is it's really hard. That is definitely one of them. I'm going to talk about some of the other reasons. And also what it would mean for us to do it.
Industry?
Yeah, right, how do we build the equipment, right? So what could we use this for? Electricity. We could use it for going into space. If you have a nuclear-powered rocket, you could get to Mars in a week. Right now, do you know how long it takes a rocket to get to Mars? 6 months. At least. And then you got to wait for the right time to then take the rocket back to Earth. So if you want to go to Mars, you're talking like a 2-year trip minimum. Imagine if you could just go for a month. Materials processing, water desalination. There's a lot of water in the oceans, but it takes a lot of energy to pull the salt out of it and make it fresh. If we had more energy, imagine what you could do to the deserts on the planet, like in California. which has got the whole Pacific Ocean right there. This is a chart about money invested into nuclear fusion. And it's a little bit complex, I can see this. This is a chart from 50 years ago where they worked out how much money you'd spend, the vertical axis, over time to get to fusion. That brown line that's flat, they said if you spend this much, you'll never really get there. The black line was actual funding for fusion energy. So this potential power source, it could totally transform resources and everything. No, we're not going to put any money in that. We got other things to do. Let's look at how much it might cost compared to the Manhattan Project, about the same price. Less than the Apollo program going to the moon. And way less than this green bar.
Which is the energy initiative.
Yeah, well, we got to see how tall it is. So let's zoom out a little bit.
Oh my God.
What is it?
That's 1 year. This is 1 year's spending on renewable energies. Hundreds of billions of dollars spent on solar panels, windmills, compared to, in orange, the estimated total cost of putting a lot of money into fusion and getting it done, making it possible to do it. Instead, what we've got is a huge amount of bureaucracy, where a lot of the programs that countries had got shut down to build this one big plant called ITER in France, where the countries of the world are getting together to build it, and it's taking forever, because it's like 30 countries working together. It's very messy. So what's happening nowadays is that smaller companies are saying, hey, let's get in on this. Maybe we'll figure out something on this, and we'll be able to commercialize it. So there's a, what I want to end with is just the sense that when you think about where we could be, and like what the real technological frontiers are, and then you contrast that to, you know, banning plastic straws, and this is the way to make sure we have a good future. You know, you can't get a bag at the store anymore. I mean, is this progress? Paper straws, they're terrible, right? So we live in a world where the only limits to the human species are those that we haven't yet broken. And it's up to us to create a culture where developing those new breakthroughs, developing those new technologies is what it's about to be a human being. Not your skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, pronouns, you know, all these other things. Like, I think, you know, we're losing the sense of what it is to actually be a human being and all of that, what we all have in common, the ability to contribute to things like this. So, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.